Hi there. You're watching On the Mark with Mark. And I've got a story I want to tell. It's about checking on the hogs. When I was a kid, let's start at the beginning. In 1969, my uncle was involved in a very bad traffic accident, head-on collision. And he was banged up pretty good, had broken collarbone. I think he broke an arm, broke his nose. And he was a hog farmer, and he could not farm. And his wife, who was a very strong woman, was also very small. And he had, I think, 2 or 3 kids at the time. And the oldest was my cousin Tom. And in '69, Tom was 7 years old. And so he was helping my aunt on the farm. And so they put out a call to all the aunts and uncles that my Uncle Leonard needed help with the chores. And they went around, and some people were able to help for a while, but as time went on, you know, people had to get to their own farms. My mother's side of the family was all farmers. So every Thanksgiving and Christmas, we always got to go and see these different farms and see how they work. It was very fascinating stuff for me and my brothers. We were from the city. So they decided that myself and my brothers could come and help, which sounds a little crazy now to ask. I would have been 7 years old at the time, get a 7-year-old kid to come and help. And my younger brother, Pat, was he was probably 5 or 6. And my older brother, Mike, was, he'd have been 8 or 9. Okay, so little pipsqueaks come out to help with the chores. Well, that's what we did. We came up to the farm. It's further north from where I live. And it was great. We got to help, and we got to actually do stuff. And we got to climb on things, like climb up a shaft in the barn and throw a bale of hay down the shaft. It was great fun. We got to climb inside of feed wagons, and we could do these things, you know, climb up there. We scurried up there like little monkeys and jumped in and slide down to the bottom of the pile of feed, and then my aunt would hand us buckets, and we'd fill the buckets and take 2 of us to lift them up over the side and hand them back to my aunt, and then we'd be feeding all the animals. And it was really fun and interesting. Well, that was kind of my introduction to my cousin Tom. Now Tom, when he was 7, his next oldest brother was only 3. So it was very difficult for Tom to be able to do things on the farm that he wanted to do, like shoot the BB gun, or build a tree house, or play on the rope swing with a 3-year-old. I mean, you've got to step down to a 3-year-old's level, and Tom did plenty of that. I mean, he was a good boy, but he also was a hard worker on the farm, and I think that's why my aunt and uncle accepted the help from such small kids, because Tom was such a hard worker, and they knew what Tom could do, and probably these lazy kids from the city could do it too. So that's what we did. So anyway, that's the introduction to the farm. Now, as it turned out, years go by, and we are going to the farm, at least I was, every summer. I would spend at least a week, you know, usually 3 or 4 weeks, not always consecutive like, but going to the farm. And we went through tree houses and rope swings and BB guns, and then mini bikes, and then motorcycles, and there was always a lot going on. But we also did a lot of work too, putting up hay every winter, and we used to get paid for that, so that was really nice too, make a little money. This was before I was 16, and this went on until I was 16 or 17, and ended up getting a part-time job in town, and then it was harder for me to get away. So there was a period of time where I kind of lost touch with my cousin Tom. Now Tom, if I had a 5th brother, it would be my cousin Tom. And I know him to this day. I talk to him regularly on the phone, and you'll never meet a better man than my cousin Tom. He is just a real stand-up guy. I pale in comparison to him. It's just the way things are. Anyway, so we're getting up in age, and we're a little more capable, and probably 12 years old, 13. I always like to estimate my age younger in these stories because it makes me look less foolish because I was young. So I was 25 probably. No, not 25. But anyway, I think honestly probably 12 or 13, maybe 14. And one of our duties or chores that we had to do after dinner was check the hogs. Now, what the hogs were in a field out behind the barn and behind the shop. We would go out to this field, and there were two portable buildings, kind of hog buildings that are just a short little building. Here, I made a drawing of what this area looked like. They were short buildings. They had a small door on one side, big enough for a hog to come through, and the hogs kind of wore down the ground all around the building, but there was tall grass in this field. And so each day we'd walk out to these buildings, and it was never made clear to me exactly what we were checking on with these hogs. So we'd go out there, and it was a decent walk, probably wasn't a quarter mile, but it was, I'd say, close to it. And we'd get out there and we'd look at the hogs, and okay, they're kind of milling around a little bit, and we'd look in the building, and there'd be some of them laying in the shade, and okay, we checked. They're doing nothing, and then we'd walk back to the house. And we did that 3-4 nights, and then about the 5th night, it's time to go check the hogs. So Tom and I head out there, and so I got an idea. Let's make this a little more fun. So I said to my cousin Tom, I said, let's do a commando raid on these hogs and scare the crap out of them. So he agreed to it. So we crouched down and we snuck up through the tall grass, and we worked our way all the way up to this building. We were real quiet. And when we got up there, we stayed right at the edge of the grass, and we could see the hogs, and they were just doing their milling around thing, not really doing much of anything, and they had no idea we were there. And then we said, okay, go. And we jumped up and we started hooting and hollering and running around and going up to the building and slapping the side of the building and making all kinds of noise. And then we went around and looked at the door, and man, hogs are like boom, 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 flying out of that door like that. But what we couldn't see was inside of that building, there was one hog in there who's not getting his turn, and he's running around, and he's not getting out of there. Well, on the opposite side of the building, where the door was, on the opposite side, there was a board that was missing. It was about this wide and about like that. And this hog was so panicked that it tried going through that hole. And it rammed through there, and it got through up to its jawbone, and it got one leg up through there. Well, the boards kind of flexed a little bit, and then when he didn't make it, they came back and they really pinched him good. I mean, he was stuck in there. And so we're looking at this, and I'm thinking, oh, crap. Gee, I wonder how he's going to get out of there, thinking, this looks bad. So my cousin goes, we got to get him out of there. And he says, I'll go on the inside and pull on him, and you push on him on the outside. And I'm like, okay. So Tom goes inside, and I'm on the outside, and I'm like, where are you going to push on a hog, And I put my foot up, like right between his eyes, and that really didn't work because it's so sloped. And I'm like, okay, I'm pushing on your nose. It's good and flat here, and I'm pushing on his nose. This hog is just squealing like mad the whole time. I mean, he is really in trouble here. And so then Tom came out, and he's like, why don't you go pull and I'll push? And I'm like, okay. And so I get on the inside, and there's one of his legs, his front leg is still in there, and I get a hold of his back leg. And this hog is, it's got to be 150 pounds. You know, I'm not sure at what point they take them to market. It wasn't like the farrowing sows or anything, but good size hog. I don't think he was 200 pounds. But anyway, so I'm pulling on this thing, and Tom is on the outside, and I don't know how he's pushing on the thing, but pretty soon I see his hands in there, and he's got a hold of that board, and he cracks and he busts the second board open right beside where he went in. And I'm pulling on it, he busts him open, and the hog comes flying in and falls over and lays on the ground and lays there with his mouth wide open. And I don't know if you know this or not, but hogs cannot sweat. So this was a hot day, and it wasn't exactly cool in that building. That thing was so panicked and overheated, it laid there on the floor, breathing like that, really hard, breathing like that. And we're like, oh no, what's he gonna do? I hope he calms down. Well, he calmed way down. His breathing slowed way down, and it stopped. Dead. My great idea. Let's do a commando raid on these hogs. Ended up killing one of these hogs. Now, that's this farmer's bread and butter. He's a hog farmer. And these two idiots, and when I say two idiots, I mean mostly me, killed one of his hogs. Now, if the dog had killed one of his hogs, that dog would be under close scrutiny as to whether or not we keep that dog. So we knew we were in some trouble. So we walked back to the house. And when I say walked back to the house, we meandered back to the house, because there was something's coming down, flowing downhill to us, and we knew what it was. So we got back to the house. Now here's a guy. This is the farmer. Now, for a period of time when I would go up to the farm, I seriously considered farming as my career, and I thought I would really like doing it. But it's things like this that made me think twice. This guy is, he's just put in a full day's work. My Aunt Grace cooked a meal that would pass for a small Thanksgiving Day meal every day. I mean, we had mashed potatoes and gravy and meat and vegetable and dessert half the time. And so he's done. He's sitting back in his chair, and he had this chair that was a spring on it, leaned back. He's got a toothpick, and he's leaning back. He's done for the day. And then these two idiots walk into the kitchen. And he looks at us, and my cousin Tom, he knows this, and he is in full panic mode. And he takes off beating around the bush about how we didn't know this would happen, and it just happened. It's just the way it went, and we didn't expect that to go this way, but it just happened like that. And my uncle was looking at him, and he's like, "What, Tom? What are you trying to say?" And he goes, "It just happened that way. It's just the way it went." He kept doing that, and finally, my uncle looked at me and he said, "Mark, is there a dead hog in one of those buildings out there?" And I said, "Yes." And Leonard jumped up from the table, went around the table over to the cupboard, and he grabbed a butcher knife this big. And honest to God, I thought he was gonna kill my cousin. His firstborn son, not his idiot nephew that he's gotta know is responsible for this. And I mean, I was backing up, and he came around the table and he went out the door. And I thought, oh, well, maybe we're going to get in trouble later, but we're off the hook for now. And my aunt was sitting there staring at us, and she says, "Well, you guys better get going." And I thought, where are we going? And she says, "Well, he's going to have to butcher that hog right now. You guys need to get out there." And so now I'm thinking, this has got to be some nasty business. I've been a little bit a part of this hunting before, and a hog, ew. So, okay, we shuffled out of the kitchen, and we went back out to that building, and by went back out there, I meant we meandered our way like teenagers out to that building. And when we got out there, Leonard was inside of the building, and now this guy is strong as a horse. He's got a hold of this thing with one hand, and he's holding it up, and he's already bled it, and he's got it cut open, and he's cleaning the thing out. When we got out there, he's like, here, grab this leg. And then my cousin grabbed the other leg, and we held onto this thing. Now, it's got to be 90 degrees in this building, and it is just hot and smelly. And now we're gutting this hog, and we're hanging onto this thing, and he's tearing the thing apart, and it's all just spilling out onto the floor. You have to excuse me, but that's the way it was. And eventually, you know, we got it to, I guess you might call it field dressing if you're a hunter. And you got to crouch down and go through this low door to get out of the thing, and he threw it up over his shoulder, and he heads off, you know, in a fast walk back to the farm, which, you know, about a quarter mile. And so we've left this, you know, bloody murder of a mess in this building, and we head back up to the house, and of course he beat us by a mile, and teenager that I was, are meandering on back up to the house, and we get up there, and they had like a garage stall that went under their house, and so he had it down there, and they had provisions where he could hook it up onto the ceiling and skin the thing out. And then my aunt had called into town to the locker, and they had the phone number for the guy who ran the meat locker for his house, and said, hey, we've got a hog that has died, and we need to get him into the locker right away. So now, okay, hey, let's do a commando raid on this hogs. Turned into, okay, you butcher a hog right now. And you, meat locker guy who's probably just finished his dinner too and is sitting with his family enjoying the evening. Now you get down to the locker, and you're going to open it up and accept this hog that my uncle's bringing in. And so they actually wrapped it in a sheet and got thrown in the back of the pickup, and we, you know, not all of us, but I went to town with them, and the guy was there, and he was in good spirits, and you know, it was cool with him, and they saved the meat. So a good idea, no, a bad idea that went horribly wrong. That's what happened. Okay, the next day it was, okay, you guys go out there and check those hogs. Okay, we checking for some idiots that might come along and scare the crap out of these hogs? Is that what we're checking for? Because I've seen them, you know. So now we carefully go out there and look them over. Oh, we went out there, and I looked in that building for that mess, and the inside of that building looked the same as it did 2 days before. Dry and dusty. That's what these hogs will do. They cleaned that whole mess up. I mean, there was nothing left. It wasn't even wet. So that was kind of creepy there. So don't pass out in a hog field, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, so years later, I'm at a family reunion, and that's been on my mind for a long time, that, God, he's really got to be ticked at me for killing that hog. And I brought it up, and I said, do you know what happened? Do you remember that day that hog died in that building and we had to butcher it? And he says, what? The hog died in one of the buildings? I go, yeah, Tom and I, we went out there to check on him, and then that hog was dead, and we had to butcher it right there. And he goes, there was always a hog dying somewhere. We had to butcher him like that all the time. I don't remember that. And I talked to my cousin about it too. He had no memory of it either. It was that trivial of an event on the farm for them that it didn't even enter into their memory. Whereas for me, that was a traumatic event there. So I told the story pretty much like I just told there. He got a pretty big kick out of it too. This is my Uncle Leonard. And he had one question. He said, did we save the meat? And I said, yeah, we took it into the locker. He goes, oh, okay, well then you don't owe me for that hog. I do believe that if they had lost the meat, I would have owed him money right there, and he probably would have known exactly to the penny how much I owed him. But fortunately, because of his actions, that thing got saved. So, that's my story. That's my, let's see, what do I call that? We killed a hog story? No, we checked on the hogs. We're checking on the hogs. What are we checking for? Maybe they should have made that clear to a guy like me. That's it. Thanks for listening to my story. I've got some other stories. Let me know if you like these stories. And if you do, I'll, I won't make it every video, but I don't know, maybe every now and then I'll do one of my stories. Mostly my stories are from my youth, we'll say. Some are from pretty young days. All right? Thanks for listening, and thanks for watching my YouTube. This is On the Mark with Mark.